What I meant by that is that there's many competing theories of terrorism and radicalization, why people radicalize, and of course we all know that generally there's different factors operating concurrently. But in many cases we really see, studying the evidence, studying case studies, that it's small incidents that happen serendipitously in people's life that lead them to a certain radicalization path or to join a certain group. Having a brother, a relative, a friend from high school that goes to a certain mosque, a certain individual might meet that individual just for happenstance one day, and then he goes to the mosque with him, and then he gets sort of fascinated by this ideology. So what I'm trying to say is that it's not always a straightforward path that leads to radicalization. In many cases, social ties have quite an important influence on why that happens. That, of course, makes it difficult when you're trying to do counter-radicalization. Since it's such a complex process, finding a solution is equally complex and very challenging. So looking at also the social ties of an individual is extremely important. So just looking at only the ideology or personal factors in many cases is not enough, but one has to look at a broader perspective. Well, I think just in terms of numbers, I think the numbers are bigger in Europe. If we put all Western Europe together, I think we just have a larger phenomenon of radicalization in Europe compared to the United States. I mentioned that number because I think there has been sort of a common understanding that radicalization is not an issue at all in the American Muslim community, and I think that's mistaken. It is inferior to what is happening in Europe, but it does exist in the United States as well. As to why actually the phenomenon of radicalization is not as widespread in the United States, I think it's a combination of factors. One has to do with just the demographics of the American Muslim population. It's generally speaking composed of individuals that are quite well-to-do, more integrated into society. Now, I don't want to equate lack of integration or lack of economic integration or economic discrimination to radicalization, but it does play a role. There's also another factor is just simply the ethnicity of some of the major groups that compose the American Muslim mosaic. Many of those components are groups that traditionally have seen very low levels of radicalizations. Thinking, for example, of the Iranian American community, which is composed largely of individuals that left Iran after '79 and hence have very little sympathy for certain politicized interpretation of Islam. The demography in Europe is quite different. If I were to profile, the average American Muslim would be quite educated, well-off, and integrated, living in the suburbs and quite integrated into American society. In Europe, it was mostly unskilled laborers with a poor education. So that background does play a role in radicalization or lack thereof. It's probably, I think, nobody is under the illusion that they can be completely solved. There will be people that, no matter what, will always embrace radical ideas and resort to violence. That is beyond the capabilities of any government to completely control that. I think what is now widely understood is that the number of the people that embrace radical ideas and then eventually turn to violence needs to be reduced. That is not only to prevent terrorist attacks, but also to favor integration. So the two things go hand in hand. I think it's very difficult. It's one of the biggest challenging. I think we have to differentiate de-radicalization and radicalization prevention. When it comes to, and both present the challenges. When it comes to de-radicalization, I think the Saudi example is a good one. Let's say you re-educate 100 people, or 100 people graduate from these re-education programs, and then 1 or 5 go back to terrorism. Is the program a success or not, if the other 95 or 99 did not? That's difficult to say. When we're talking about radicalization prevention, it's probably even gets more challenging, because how do you prove a negative? How do you prove that that number of people did not radicalize because of your effort? That's impossible to measure. and also the only way you can in a way measure that is in the long term. If over the span of a generation of 15, 20 years you don't see growing radicalization in a certain community, I think you can in a way assess that your program at least played a role in preventing radicalization. But it's of course very difficult, and that's one of the challenges that programs are facing. It's the nature of governments to need successes immediately and results immediately. So waiting 15, 20 years is not exactly in the nature of public policy.